There is a world all around you, filled with creations that will amaze. A world of destinations that astound. A world waiting to be explored. Come and discover the unseen world. On today's episode of The Unseen World, we take a journey into the Ice Age from the heart of Los Angeles. Then take a digital dive into a retro tech lab, celebrating generations of innovations.
You wouldn't think you would come to LA and learn about science. You know, here in the Miracle Mile, there's all these other things to do. That's lots of cultural things going on. You can go to art museums, you can go to great restaurants, and you can go see music, and then you can come here and learn about science. My name's Reagan Dunn. I'm assistant curator at the Brea Tarpits Museum. The Brea Tarpits are sinks of asphalt. And so asphalt is a petroleum product. And so the way that the so-called pits formed here is that Los Angeles was once under an ocean many millions of years ago. And in that ocean, it was teeming with life, and there were a lot of algae, marine algae, and those algae died, sunk to the bottom of the ocean, and were pressurized over time and heated up, and that produced oil. So meanwhile, Los Angeles rose a little bit higher, the seas retreated, and some tectonic activity happened. So meaning that the land was squished, and what formed in this area was a kind of a mound, what we call an anticline. And that makes this beautiful area that traps oil. And when you have cracks in these anticlines, oil seeps up from those reservoirs below and trickles up to the surface. And so you have the situation where this rich, sticky oil, it's not hot, but it's very sticky, comes up to the surface, spreads out across the ground, and then it might get covered with leaves and that kind of thing, but it's really sticky. So when the animals during the Pleistocene, or the last 50,000 years, were walking across that, they'd get stuck. And so when those animals got stuck, they attracted a lot of attention. Say an herbivore is walking across this landscape, a horse or a giant ground sloth or a camel or a mammoth or a mastodon, they get stuck in the tar and they're struggling to get out, and they attract a lot of attention from the carnivores in the area. So you have saber-toothed cats, dire wolves, American lions, American bears, very huge short-faced bears. They come to check out what's going on and to get a free meal. So you have this buffet essentially stuck in the tar, and then those carnivores also get stuck in the tar. So what you have are just thousands of years of these interactions going on. So animals coming to the food trough, basically, and getting stuck. And they die, decompose, and their bones trickle down into the bottom of these so-called tar pits. And many thousands of years later, we've come to excavate them and put them in our museum. And so why this place is so significant is because you have such massive concentrations of these Ice Age animals and plants and snails and insects. So essentially you have whole ecosystems preserved in the asphalt over many millennia. over the ice ages. And it's a very interesting period of time because you have our first deposits are about 47,000 years old, and that's in the depth of the ice age, right? There was no glaciers here, but there were glaciers elsewhere on Earth. And then so we have those deposits from the ice age. Then we have deposits that go into a warming phase. And also our deposits here cover the time period when humans first arrived to this continent.
The Unseen World will be right back. We now return to the Unseen World. Scientists come from all over the world to study the plant and animal remains found in the tar pits, a process which can be experienced and observed by museum visitors.
People can see every part of the process, excavation to the lab process, and then they can peek into the collections here and see where the fossils ultimately end up. So down in the excavations area, we have several different projects going on. One is a pit known as Pit 91, and you can peer into this pit, but this pit has been continuously excavated since about 1969. And so you can see we've gone several feet down, and you can see large bones sticking out, and the excavation is done in like an archaeological dig where you go, very slowly, centimeter by centimeter down into these grids and excavate that material. There's also another project going on where we have large tar pit deposits that were recovered from a construction project nearby in Hancock Park near the art museum. And these deposits were basically put into these large containers. So they were unexcavated, put into these large landscaping boxes, the kind that you move huge trees with, and those were put onto our campus. And so there's 23 of those in total, so 23 deposits that were recovered that are full of fossils. And those make up what we call Project 23. And so that excavation has been going on for the last 14 years, and that continues every day. So you go out, you can see our excavators working in those boxes every day and pulling out new discoveries, which they bring to the lab. Here, what we have is what we call a fishbowl lab, and it's one of the first in the country where people can come and see the process of preparing the fossils. So the fossils are brought in from our excavation sites down at the tar pits, and then they're brought in and the specimens are covered in asphalt and sediment, and they need to be cleaned so that they can go into our collection. And so that process happens here. It's mostly staffed by volunteers. And every day you'll see all these chairs are full of people, and they're cleaning fossils. So they're taking the asphalt off using different solvents, and they're repairing the fossils by gluing them back together and repairing chips and making them hard so that they'll last forever in our collections. And then they're also doing some microfossil sorting. And so what that is, they're looking in the sand grains that we've cleaned from the asphalt and finding tiny little things in there, like little bug parts and little plant parts and tiny little mice teeth and weasel teeth and the tiny little things. And so that goes on in here 361 days a year. And there's a mighty crew of volunteers that keep this place going. And you can see that going on every day in the Fossil Prep Lab.
For Reagan, the benefit of this open process is clear.
The best part about having science on display is that people can see what the facts are. This is a very open process, and people can come and learn about it. There's no mystery. There aren't secret scientists doing any work. It's right here out in the open, and this is where we uncover facts, and people can see that, and then they can more clearly sort of understand how we interpret what we find. Coming to a place like this, and where girls can see other girls, or people can see people that look like them doing science in the windows. I think that's a connection for them that they can think, oh, I could do this.
If you'd like to visit the La Brea Tar Pits, they are located in Los Angeles, California. Hours and pricing varies, so please visit tarpits.org or call 323-934-7243 for more information. The Unseen World will be right back. We now return to The Unseen World.
I'm Lori Emerson, and I'm an Associate Professor of English and Intermediate Arts Writing and Performance at CU Boulder and the Director of the Media Archeology Lab. In 2009, I was given a little grant by an entity on campus called Atlas, and they gave me the grant to build a computer lab. And at that time, I think the expectation was that it would be just a regular computer lab for English undergrad students. But I had the thought that it would be really interesting to have a room full of Apple IIe computers in particular, because I was interested in a Canadian experimental poet by the name of B.P. Nicol, and he created one of the first kinetic digital poems in 1982, 1983 on an Apple IIe computer in Apple Basic. And so my idea was that I would get this poem on the original 5 1/4-inch floppies and bring in my undergrad students and have them have hands-on access to the original platform and the original environment that the poem was meant to be played with, and the original environment it was created with, just to try to get them to think about what difference it makes to use one technology over another, and what difference it makes to what you're able to produce. So at some point, I think I thought it would be interesting to compare the Apple IIe with the other comparable popular computer of the time, which is a Commodore 64. And for better or for worse, that really opened the floodgates for the lab being what it is today. The Media Archeology Lab is a place where people from the larger community and also from CU Boulder can come and have hands-on access to old tech that's from the late 19th century through to about the early 2000s. The MAL is something of an anti-museum. Everything here works, and it's meant to be played with, turned on, opened up, and experimented with. I think that there's a value in having objects behind glass, because it does preserve them for a long time. But that said, I think there also needs to be a companion effort. So beside the artifact that's behind glass, ideally there would be an artifact that you can actually open up and try and feel it out, because you're getting a really limited understanding of how it works by just looking at the screen and just looking at the outside. And especially when you start to get into the realm of digital technologies, what's on the screen or what's on the outside is in a way an elaborate illusion. It's like a magic show. And what's really going on is behind the hood. If you want to have a sense of how the computer or how the technology is determining what you do and how you think and how you create, I think the only way to do that is by having hands-on access to these machines and these pieces of media.
The Unseen World will be right back. We now return to the Unseen World. The tactile tech environment not only allows people to experience old or outdated technology with their own hands, but can also help demystify today's technology.
People come in the lab and they just start laughing and hooting and hollering and, say, "Oh my God, I've seen a typewriter, but I've never actually used one." And then they start typing with very, dramatic high hand strokes, and then the typewriter bell will suddenly ring and they're like, oh my God, what just happened? I was like, you just need to push the carriage. They're like, what's a carriage? It's that metal thing. They have to push it. And I think it's also beautiful for them to see a direct relationship between the physical motion of pushing the carriage and what actually happens. I think it blows their minds, actually, especially arts and humanities students who have just become accustomed to the idea that they will never understand how their computers work or their phones work. Most of them believe that they will never program. But I bring them into the lab and I have them open up an Apple IIe computer. You can just lift up the lid and you can start figuring out a little by little how it actually works from the inside out. And you can stop swapping boards in and out. And then I can teach them just a little bit of programming with Apple Basic. And I think it's really empowering for them, and it's really important actually to give that sense that they can actually understand tech around them, or that they can imagine a world where that is possible. Many of them have just become resigned to the fact that they have to be online all the time because that's where everything is. That's where their friends are, that's where information is, that's where knowledge is, that's where jobs are. And they've also just become resigned to the fact that they feel like they have no privacy and they have to give all of their information away, that there's really no alternative. So again, that's one of the arguments I'm trying to make with the MAL is that, look, there are these alternatives. There are alternatives sometimes only from 10 years ago. So it's not even really the distant past that we're talking about. One experiment that we've done is we've given 1 laptop per child computers to students. And these computers are not without their problems, especially in the historical context of how those computers came to be, but they have a really unique ability to network with each other. And so we have been able to teach students how to create a mesh network connecting all these 1 laptop per child computers. And I think it's really moving for students to be able to be in a network environment, but one that is not necessarily about mining all of their data and surveilling everything that they do. It really is more about direct interactions with people. Mostly what I'm hoping people feel when they come to the lab is that I hope that they leave with a sense of empowerment. This is a word I keep using over and over again, but I think something that really bothers me is a sense of passive resignation in the face of the technology that we're given, that many people feel like they have to just passively accept the technology that's given to us and the current norms for the consumption of technology and consumption of knowledge and information. So what I'm hoping the MAL does is just light their imagination and give them a sense that things really could be otherwise. And hopefully they can go and learn about, for example, these community Wi-Fi efforts, or they can go learn about how they can build their own mesh network, or maybe they could go get their ham radio license and they could start broadcasting over amateur radio. We've been working now for years to try to make this a place where people can come who have zero experience in tech or computing or in like electrical engineering, and anyone can come and just tinker around and play and feel comfortable.
The Media Archeology Lab is located in Boulder, Colorado. For hours and information, please visit MediaArcheologyLab.com or call 303-735-0115. The Unseen World will be right back. Have you explored a location featured on today's episode of The Unseen World? Then share your stories with us and join the conversation at #SeeUnseenWorld on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter. And if you know of a hidden gem, roadside attraction, or any other interesting location you think deserves to be uncovered, visit SeeUnseenWorld.com to make a suggestion to our producers.
good.